The message I wanted to give you guys today is you can have, be, or do whatever you want to do in life. I'm going to say that again. You can have, be, or do whatever you want to do in this lifetime. Who's the youngest person in the room? The youngest person. Who's anybody 12? Anybody 11? So the youngest will be between you two. Who's the oldest in the room? How old are you, man? 32. 32. All right. Between the youngest and the oldest, who thinks they have all the answers?
Nobody.
Nobody. I'm going to share a little story with you. Yes, ma'am.
Still to learn more.
Still have to learn more. Life is about learning. It's about continuous learning. You're always going to be learning in life. One of my favorite stories is about a preacher, a doctor, and someone who thought they knew it all. Anybody know what a guillotine is? Anybody? Well, the guillotine, yes ma'am, you like, you know. There you go. In the old days, they used to have people and they used to put them in public, and they used to put them and chop their necks off. And the guillotine was what did that. So anyway, there was a preacher, a doctor, and someone who thought they knew it all. They were sentenced to a guillotine. They were all given one last thing to say to the crowd. The first one up was the preacher. The preacher looked at the crowd and said, "Keep the faith." And as he went under the guillotine stopped about 2 inches from his neck. So the crowd thought he was innocent, and they let him go. The next was the doctor. He was sentenced to that same guillotine. And again, the blade stopped about 2 inches from his neck as he said before the crowd, "Physician, heal thyself." The last one up was the person who thought they knew it all. And as he looked at the crowd and he began to say his words, he looked up and said, "I think those 2 screws are loose. I think if you tighten them up, the machine is going to work like it should." Everybody get that?
Oh my God.
The person who knew it all hurt himself by knowing too much. He said if they tighten up the bolts, the machine would work. If he just said something and went along with it like everyone else, he would have been free as well. And the reason I say that is because we all have a learning curve. Life is about learning. Life is about continuous learning. You should never think you know it all. And see, when I was in high school, I was one of those people who thought they knew it all. But my grades told it all that I didn't know. My actions told it all that I didn't know. Just after high school, right after my 21st birthday, because I thought I knew it all, I found myself homeless. I was homeless, but my thoughts is what put me there. Because I thought I knew everything. I thought I had all the answers, so I found myself homeless. I found myself living in the backseat of a car during cold nights because I thought I knew it all. Does anybody know how many thoughts a person has today? Somebody take a guess. How many thoughts do you think the average person thinks a day? How many?
1 million.
Not quite that much. Anybody else? The average person thinks about 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day. 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day. But the thoughts are what drives you to who you are. The thoughts are what drive you to who you become. I'm going to give you the formula today to work on your character, to fix your character to look like whatever you want it to be. Remember I told you you can have, be, or do whatever you want in life. So the first thing I want you to write on your paper is thought. Thoughts are very important. One man said this about thought. He said, nothing is either good or bad. He said it's only our thoughts that make them so. I heard someone else say, you become what you think about most of the time. You become what you think about most of the time. I heard another person say, when you change the way you think about things, your whole world will change. Does anybody know why that happens? When you change the way you think about things, your world starts to change? Things you thought you didn't have any control over? Anybody know? I'm going to give you the progression. Thoughts are important because they discern what our actions are going to be. That's the next thing I want you to write on the paper, actions. See, when you think about things, you begin to speak them into existence. And when you begin to speak things into existence, you begin to take actions on whatever you want to be, have, or do in this lifetime. Whatever you want to be, do in this lifetime, it's up to you. Once upon a time in this lifetime, I was homeless. And I love, anybody know who William Shakespeare is? A poet guy. That's right. He said, once upon a time, he said, the whole world's a stage. And all the men and women are merely players. He said, we all have our exits and our entrances. And one man in his lifetime will play many parts. You're going to play many characters in this lifetime. You're going to play a sister, you're going to play a brother, you're going to play a cousin, you're going to play a nephew, you're going to play an uncle. You're going to play many different roles in this lifetime. Everything starts with the thought process. When you begin to think stuff, you begin to put them into action. And when you begin to put them into action, you have to do what's called start with the end in mind. And when you start with the end in mind, you tell yourself, you begin to think how you want to look when you're grown, how you want to look 5 years from now, how do you want to look 1 year from now, how do you want to look 10 years from now. That's all up to you. So if you want to be an actor, you want to be a dancer, you want to be a football player, a basketball player, a lawyer, a doctor, that's all up to you. Nobody else can stop you. Everything is limited only by our thoughts. When we begin to free our thoughts, we begin to free ourselves. When we begin to free ourselves, we can be, have, or do anything we want in this lifetime. But you got to first think you can. What's the difference between success and failure? I was once asked that question, and the answer I got sounded crazy, but made sense in the end. The thing that holds you back from between success and failure is a T. If you look at the word can, everyone in this room, you can do anything you put your mind to. But when you change that word and when you add the T to the end of that word, that can becomes can't. And like I said, the man said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. 100% of the time, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. So you have to first believe that you can do it and start taking action. And when you begin to take action, you got to have faith. I heard a lot of people talk about God and Jesus. So you must know a little something about faith. You can't begin to walk a path of something that hasn't happened yet and see all kinds of distractions. You can't see that and not have faith to keep you on that path until it comes to pass. Until that thing happens, until you become that lawyer, until you become that doctor, until you become that football player, that basketball player, whatever you want to become in life. You have to hold on to that picture, and that picture has to be held by faith. That's the only thing that can keep you maintained on that path. Because what happens on this path we call life, things begin to happen. I never realized or never thought to myself that I would be homeless. But that's what happened to me. And I could have stayed homeless. I could have stayed where I was at. But the only reason I didn't stay where I was at because I began to change the way I thought about things. I began to look at things that I used to look at as impossible. And I began to look at them as possible. Because anything in this life is possible. Anything in this life is possible. I'm going to keep saying that. Anything in this life is possible. If someone can come from homeless to where I am now, and I'm still on the path, I'm still on the journey, kept by faith. And that's the only way you're going to get there. So your thoughts become your actions. Your actions become your habits. That's the next thing I want you to write down. Who can tell me a little something about habits? Yes, ma'am.
Something that you do constantly.
Something that you do constantly. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
They're hard to break.
They're hard to break. Habits are something that you do because you've done them so many times that it becomes natural. It becomes instant. You don't even have to think about doing it anymore. It just happens. Anybody, have you ever seen somebody yawn and you're sitting right across from them, they yawn and that makes you yawn? It just happens. There's nothing we can do about it. Habits are time savers. When we learn to do something by habit, we don't even have to think about it. So when we're thinking those 50 to 70,000 thoughts, we can direct our thoughts to something else. And we always have a choice of what we direct our thoughts to. We become what we think about most of the time. So whatever your burning desire is, whatever you want to be with passion and enthusiasm, that's what you're going to be, that's what you're going to become. If you believe that it can happen. And when you begin to do it so many times that it becomes a habit, you don't even have to think about it anymore. A man once said, we become what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. If we want to be excellent, we have to make excellence a habit. And the only way we make excellence a habit is we have to do it over and over and over again. I heard the other day the difference between a crazy man and a genius is the crazy man goes and goes and goes and doesn't have a goal or end in mind. The genius is the person who goes and goes and goes and knows what he is going after in life. So you have to make up in your mind, what are you going to go after in life? It's up to you. Make it a habit. Whatever that is, make that a habit. Make excellence your habit. And that way you do it without even thinking about it. Habits become character. That's the next thing I want you to write down. Character. So that's the progression. Your thoughts become your actions when you believe them enough. The difference between thought and belief, a belief is nothing more than a thought that you continue to have. So if you continue to believe you can, you will. And that becomes your action. And that becomes your habits. And when you do it enough, that becomes your character. So your character becomes something you don't even think about. So if that